Today I'm coming to you all to talk about the Karmelo Anthony case. I am really sad about this whole entire situation. It's really disheartening of what our black boys have to go through, our black males have to go through. And I'm not trying to make it about race, but I'm just saying that I feel like our males and black males go through a lot to try to survive in this world. But anyway, I'm going to give you a summary of the Karmelo Anthony trial. The trial centered on whether Karmelo Anthony was legally responsible for the death of Austin Metcalf during the altercation at the high school track meet. The prosecution argued that Anthony intentionally stabbed Metcalf and that the evidence supported a murder conviction. The defense argued that Anthony acted in self-defense during a confrontation and should not be found guilty of murder. The trial, it was open to the public and members of the media, but they couldn't have cameras, live streams, audio recordings were not permitted. Because of these restrictions, we as the public only receive information through reporters, written accounts, or courtroom sketches rather than a televised coverage, which is odd. During the trial, both sides were allowed to present their evidence, question witnesses, challenge testimony, and make arguments to the jury. Anthony was represented by attorneys who presented his version of events and argued that he feared for his safety during the encounter. One issue that received significant attention was the jury selection. The final jury did not include any black jurors. The defense challenged some of the prosecution's decisions to remove potential jurors, arguing that black jurors were being excluded. But the judge reviewed those objections and ruled that the prosecution's stated reasons were legally race neutral, meaning that they were not based on race according to the court's findings, which is odd to me as well. The judge also instructed the jury on multiple verdicts. Jurors were not limited to choosing between murder or an acquittal. They were also allowed to consider lesser charges such as manslaughter if they believed the facts fit those offenses more closely. Supporters of the verdict pointed to several factors that suggest the process followed standard legal procedures. Both sides were allowed to present their cases. The defense was to argue self-defense. Objections were heard and ruled on by the judge. The jury received instructions on different possible verdicts, and the proceedings were open to the public observation through the media. Critics of the trial have focused primarily on the jury selection process, particularly the absence of black jurors on the final panel. Some believe this raised questions about whether the jury fully reflected the community. Others note that the judge reviewed those concerns and found no legal violation in the selection. The main question was whether Anthony's actions were criminal or legally justified as self-defense. The jury heard evidence from both sides and received instructions from the judge, deliberated on the case, and ultimately received a verdict based on the evidence and the law as they understood it. I don't know. I have a lot of questions that I really don't have answers to. I'm not an attorney. I do have a degree in criminal justice, but that doesn't make me an attorney. But I'm still having questions. I'm still having doubts about the entire situation. My first concern is why they didn't have a black person on the jury. What were the reasons that the prosecutor gave? Although there's only 12% of the population, there should have been at least one black juror. That's just in my opinion. What's also concerning to me is why the judge wouldn't allow the media to have cameras and recordings in the courtroom. They can have electronic devices. They were restricted during the testimony, and security procedures were enforced for everyone in the courtroom. That's just odd to me as well. To me, this was kind of like a high-profile case, and they should have been allowed to record in the courtroom if they allowed the media in there. So it just makes no sense to me. It make me feel like they had something to hide. Another thing that's concerning to me is the defense. I don't feel like they prepped the witness like they should have, because initially, the boy said that that Metcalf initiated it, but then in the same breath he said that Karmelo shouldn't have done what he did. So that led me to believe that the defense didn't do their job in prepping a witness on what to say and how to say it. What's also concerning to me is, since it was a self-defense case, why the Karmelo, then why the, nah, I can't even get it out. I'm so frustrated. Why Karmelo's attorney didn't let him take the stand to give his account of events. And I know it's always questionable whether or not you should put your client on the stand, but in certain instances in self-defense, only the defendant can give their account of what happened. So I guess it just depends on the situation. What's also concerning to me is, if this happened when he was 17, why was he tried as an adult when it initially happened when he was a minor? It seemed like a setup, and the judge, prosecutor, and defense attorney were all in cahoots together. That's just my personal opinion. The trial seemed like it was a really speedy trial. For this murder case, it was relatively short. But they could go, from a few days to weeks or even several months. It's going to depend on the number of witnesses, the amount of physical and forensic evidence, whether the facts are disputed, whether there are multiple defendants, whether experts extensively testify, whether the defense raises complex legal issues. It just depends on a lot of things, even though I still question the Karmelo's attorney. I don't feel like he had good defense. In his case, the key facts were not heavily disputed. There was a broad agreement that Anthony's death, Metcalf, the main dispute was why it happened and whether it legally qualified as self-defense, manslaughter, or murder. The case focused on single incidents with a limited number of witnesses, and the trial just moved quickly. So they were trying to determine who caused the death. Instead, the main question was whether Karmelo Anthony's actions were legally justified as self-defense or whether they constituted a criminal homicide. It's just, I don't know. This is really disturbing to me. I hate when we have cases like this, especially with a young black male. That's just my own personal opinion. It's like we have to be on our P's and Q's about everything. Like, we can't be lacking on everything, and it's got to start from birth, to me, almost from instilling in your child to watch what you do. Because of you're black, it's gonna be different. And I hate to put race into it. I really do. But when you look at the facts and you look at the history of things that happen between white versus black, or any color versus black, it seems like the black person always get the short end of the stick. I mean, in his case, I feel like he should have testified, because maybe he could have given his counts of defense. He could explain why he perceived at the moment of the incident. He could have described why he believed that he was in danger. He could tell the jury about his state of mind, which is central to his self-defense claim. He could have personally denied parts of the prosecution's version of events. But that also depends on his attorney as well, because if it's his attorney has to really prep him for testimony, because the prosecution gonna cross-examine him, and any prior inconsistent statements will be challenged. Credibility will be challenged, and nervousness and poor communication may hurt the defense. So you really have to prep a person if they're claiming self-defense. It's really common for defendants to testify in self-defense cases because the jury often wants to understand what the defendant believed was happening at the time. However, many successful self-defense cases in which the defendant never takes the stand. So I guess it's kind of up in the air. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an attorney. These are just things that's concerning me. I don't know. I probably would have really prepped my client. I probably would have allowed him to tell his side of the story, because it's hard for someone else to tell your story. Nobody knew the frame of mind he was in. Nobody knew whether or not he really feared for his life. He can only be the one that expressed that. So he had to depend on his lawyer and whoever else to prove that he was afraid. I believe, sometimes you need to allow your client to testify in order for them so the jury can see their concerns. Like, I really did fear for my life. I don't know. The defendant can only give his perception and fear at the time. He can only articulate and get the impression on the jury. If it's gaps in the evidence, he's the only one that can explain. The defendant account is already supported by other evidence or witnesses. He should have been able to give his account of events. And like I said, he could have been prepped for it. His attorney should have prepped his other witnesses for the testimony. I just don't feel like he got a fair trial. That's just my personal opinion. I really don't know. So whether or not he should have been advised to testify or not, I don't know. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Also, as far as in some cases, it would be legally possible in some circumstances for him to be tried as a juvenile, but unfortunately, it was in the state of Texas. Texas have really strict laws. So in Texas, state law generally treats 17-year-olds as an adult for criminal prosecution. So that means that a 17-year-old can be charged directly in adult criminal court, especially in serious offenses like murder. Texas is just a state that you don't want to be in for anything serious, because they're going to throw the book at you. I really hate the fact that they didn't consider voluntary manslaughter instead of murder, because he didn't just outright murder him. Voluntary manslaughter occurs when someone intentionally causes a death, but the law considers the circumstances less blameworthy. Just like, for example, if a person kills someone in a heat of passion after a sudden, high provocative event, or if a person honestly but unreasonably believes deadly force is necessary for self-defense. Sometimes called imperfect self-defense in some states. And that's how I feel like with this case, it should have been voluntary manslaughter. Because the act that caused the death may have been intentional, but the circumstances reduced it from murder to manslaughter. Because to me, the altercation started with Metcalf. So Karmelo Anthony just defended himself in the situation. I don't know, you guys. Y'all let me know what y'all think. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. and give me your opinions on what y'all think should or should not have happened, or what was fair or unfair in the situation. Like, subscribe, and share. And I will be back on here soon.